I know it's been a while. It feels like it's been a little too long, but we're back. It's May. Hi, guys. I know it's been a while, but we're here. A lot has happened. I'm Korea. That's Ari. Uh, Ari, it's been a while. How you doing?
Yeah, a lot of fun NBA playoffs, NFL draft, MLB, a lot of everything going on. I think today we'll focus on the NFL draft and recap all of that, and then Wednesday we'll kind of go over the latest on NBA playoffs. But what a game between the Warriors and Grizzlies in Game 1 of that series! That should definitely be a fun series. But we'll get into that probably on Wednesday. But today is all about the NFL draft. So as I pull the kind of recap of it up, do you what was your kind of initial thoughts on? Well, I guess I'll start off at round one.
Yeah, I mean, let's go straight into it. So obviously, the draft started Thursday. We talked about it last Wednesday in our latest episode about how obviously the Jags were number one, and then it was the Lions after that, then the Texans, and then that looks good by the way. You maybe just want to zoom in a little bit. Yeah, there you go. And then here it is. So obviously the first round. This was on Thursday. It feels like a while ago, but the first one was on Thursday. It was led by the Jaguars taking Trayvon Walker. He shot up draft boards because of that combine performance he had. Obviously, a lot of people were very skeptical of the Jags pick here since Trayvon Walker probably would have been on day 3 if there was no combine for a lot of people. A lot of analysts said that he would have definitely been a day 3 guy if it wasn't for the combine. So Jags missing out on Aiden Hutchinson, who the Lions got at 2. Aiden Hutchinson went to Michigan. He goes back home, playing in Detroit in front of probably in front of his family. So that's great to see there. And then obviously the top 10 was rounded out with to Derek Stingley Jr. going to the Houston Texans, Sauce Ahmad Gardner going to the Jets, and then 5, the Giants got Kayvon Thibodeau, the elite defensive end. Panthers got some O-line help with 6 with Ikwonu. And then the Giants also got some O-line help with Evan Neal. And then the first wide receiver taken off the board here was Drake London at 8. Was a very big surprise for me. And then the Seahawks took Charles Cross, great pick at 9. And then to round out the top 10, Garrett Wilson was drafted by the Jets. Let's just go with the top 10 for now. Obviously, one of the bigger surprises in this was Drake London. A lot of people had Garrett Wilson pretty much being the number 1 wide receiver in this draft. But I think Atlanta likes him because of that size comparison, like Mike Evans. His ability, just his reach is ridiculous. He has the height, and he's a threat in the red zone. But out of these first 10, Ari, what were your bigger impressions? Obviously, Trayvon Walker going number 1, but what kind of surprised you with the first 10 picks of the draft?
Yeah, I don't know if I would say I was like surprised about anything. I mean, I guess a little bit of Stingley going ahead of Gardner, but I mean, most had those two as kind of 1A, 1B, so that wasn't a huge shocker. You mentioned Drake London, and there were some kind of reports of the Falcons having him at the top of their kind of wide receiver draft board, so I wasn't like super shocked about that. Yeah, I mean, I can't say there's like too many huge surprises. I mean, we were talking leading in the couple weeks leading in that Trayvon Walker became the betting favorite, so that was kind of expected. I think the day of the round 1, he was like minus 400 something, so he was a huge betting favorite. So that wasn't a shocker, and then that led to Detroit taking Hutchinson, which was expected. So yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any huge shockers outside of maybe Stingley and maybe London going where they went. But again, that's kind of nitpicking the top 10 in terms of surprises. But then it was interesting kind of seeing going into 10, 11, 12 with 3 straight. Or I guess the Jets already had the 10 pick from the Seahawks. I think that was the trade with the Jamal Adams. But then we had the back-to-back trading up with the Saints. I believe Washington had the 11 pick, and then I think Minnesota 12 pick. So both of them traded up to take our receivers. We talked about how receiver was going to go heavy early, and we saw that kind of in the mid to late portion of round 1 with London, Wilson, Olave, Jamison Williams, Jahan Dotson, Traylon Burks, and then a lot more into rounds 2 and 3. We had a couple of kind of the big blockbuster trades that weren't even kind of primarily oriented around the pick, but around other players. And A.J. Brown going to Philadelphia for this 18 pick, and Marquise Brown going to Arizona for that 23 pick. I think it was 23, and the Ravens traded down again. And then today we got the news of DeAndre Hopkins being suspended the first 6 games of the season. So that kind of makes that trade make more sense. You would assume that the Ravens kind of knew that maybe something was going to happen, so that made more sense. But yeah, I mean, overall, I can't really say there's a huge surprises in round 1, but it was definitely fun, full of exciting kind of twists and turns and trades that we were kind of hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, you have pretty much the 3 biggest splashes in the first round was the Arizona Cardinals trading for Hollywood Brown for that pick. Obviously, Lamar Jackson voiced his frustrations on Twitter, so that's something interesting to see as we go forward. And then the bigger trade was Philly acquiring A.J. Brown from Tennessee and trading up and getting Jordan Davis at what was it, 14, I believe? Yeah, at 13. Jordan Davis at 13. Yeah, and then the Titans now got their new replacement for A.J. Green and Traylon Burks. Obviously, A.J. Brown, was very – we talked about there were 3 receivers who were very frustrated with their current positions. Deebo Samuel, who already requested a trade. We've seen I've heard of rumors that Terry McLaurin is frustrated with what's going on in Washington. And then there was A.J. Brown, who obviously people knew he wanted to get traded, but obviously the big splash by the Tennessee Titans on draft night made that possible. Now he's going to Philly. And then obviously New Orleans trading up to Chris Olave. That was pretty interesting to see. Obviously, Michael Thomas has been on the sideline for a little while now. And obviously the Saints are going to be going in a new direction, new head coach, new quarterback. Michael Thomas is probably going to be shipped somewhere else, I bet. So if he doesn't, I think if he's not a free agent, I believe. So yeah, Chris Olave, yeah. And then Chris Olave it looks like Chris Olave will be the new receiver down in the Bayou. So yeah, you mentioned all these wide receivers. It was pretty interesting to see the 10 through 12. Obviously, Jameson Williams, Chris Olave, and Garrett Wilson all played with each other for a little bit at Ohio State. And then they went 10, 11, 12 to the Jets, Saints, and then the Lions for Jameson Williams. Definitely one of the more intriguing storylines in this first round. But obviously, you look at the whole first round, and then you scroll all the way down to 20 when you have Kenny Pickett, who gets drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that was one of the bigger storylines heading out of that draft. Why Kenny Pickett? A lot of people were – I mean, obviously, yes, he was the more NFL-ready quarterback. And we knew that Pittsburgh was probably going to be drafting a quarterback. And then so Pickett, literally does not have to go anywhere. He literally can just go back to his college dorm and play and be the starting quarterback potentially for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But he's staying in Pittsburgh. So that's pretty much an expectation that Pickett and Trubisky are definitely going to be competing for that number 1 job. One of the steals of this first round was definitely number 26, Jermaine Johnson going to the Jets. I mean, you draft him at that value. I mean, he was projected to be a top 10 pick.
Yeah, so I was going to say somehow the Jets taking him at 10 with their 10 pick. So
yeah, exactly. And for him to fall, all the way down to 26, and then the Jets traded up for that pick right into their laps. I mean, the Jets pretty much, you can say the Jets won this first round easily. I mean, they got the cornerback in Sauce Gardner. They got their wide receiver in Garrett Colson. And then they got Jermaine Johnson, who fell all the way down to 26. I mean, the Giants, New York would stand up for this draft. I mean, and then you get Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal, great pass rusher. And Evan Neal pretty much known as one of the best offensive linemen in this draft. And I've seen a lot of people say that he could potentially be one of the best players out of this draft. So, Ari, I know I've talked a lot about this first round, but definitely my bigger impressions, great drafting by the Jets and Giants. Obviously, one of my bigger questions was the Cowboys taking Tyler Smith. Obviously, they've been targeting him, but reaching for Tyler Smith all the way at what was that pick, number 24, I believe. Yeah, he got picked 24. He was projected to be a third rounder, so pretty questionable pick. But I guess Jerry Jones and that organization really liked him in that fit for him. But
and then you have the Patriots taking Cole Strange too in the first round, who was projected to be late. So, two interesting selections for those two teams.
Yeah, I was literally about to ask Ari. I was gonna say, what were your kind of impressions about this first round as a whole? Winners and losers of the first round.
Yeah, I mean, I think you talked about the Jets. I think their three selections makes them an easy, winner on paper. You'll have the Wilson to Wilson connection, Zach Wilson to Garrett Wilson, Maud Gardner to go along with their recently signed DJ Reed on the outside for cornerbacks. And then Jermaine Johnson, who many had projected kind of to go in the top 10 and who fell all the way to 26 to land those three. And then the Giants, you mentioned as well, landing Thibodeau and Neal to kind of address the offensive line and, pass rush and defensive line. Made a lot of sense for those two teams. I think the Ravens, even though they lost Marquise Brown, I think just kind of going best player available, landing Kyle Hamilton, who some early on had going, top 5 overall, and then landing, probably the best center in this class in Linderbaum of Iowa. Makes a lot of sense for them and what they need. Obviously, losing Marquise Brown gives them kind of that whole wide receiver. So I imagine that they're going to go after the wide receivers still available in free agency between Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham, Julio Jones, maybe Antonio Brown's been linked to the Ravens for a while, dating back even, last year or two. So we'll see how they address that. That's mostly the first round. I think everyone here knows that we're Seahawks fans, so I kind of wanted to go through the Seahawks draft, so I'll pull that up.
As we get toward the Seahawks first draft, one more quick note about that Ravens thing. You mentioned all those guys. It's gonna be interesting now because Hollywood Brown and Antonio Brown, they're related, and I know Antonio Brown really wanted to have that connection with his cousin, and now he's going to Arizona, and obviously D-Hop's going to be out for a very long time, obviously because of his juicing. So maybe that Antonio Brown connection could move to Arizona. You never know, but it looks like the Ravens may have to definitely address that in the offseason. You mentioned all those guys who are still free agents in the NFL, but now this is the Seahawks full draft class, all rounds. We already talked about Charles Cross in the first round. Seahawks had back-to-back picks in the second round. They went with Boy Mafe out of Minnesota, the edge rusher. And then right after that, they went with Kenneth Walker, the running back out of Michigan State. A lot of people were questioning this pick, but I mean, this man is a touchdown machine. And obviously our running back situation right now is a little suspect with Chris Carson. We've already talked about him. And then, Rashad Penny he's great, but he's not, his health is very questionable, but the Seahawks still finished a great draft class with drafting third round Abe Lucas out of Wazoo. As someone who went to Wazoo and watched this man play for all 4 years, this man was one of the best outside tackles I've ever seen. He did not allow a single quarterback sack since I think his freshman year. He's good. He's one of the best pass blockers in the Pac-12. That's what the Seahawks definitely need right there. And then right after that, number 4, fourth round, Kobe Bryant out of Cincinnati, great value pick. I know, Ari, you want to talk more about this pick, so I'll let you talk about it right here. But all I just want to say, that was a great pick by the Seahawks, drafting him in the 4th round. He was paired with Sauce Gardner, so a lot of people, were obviously more attentive to Sauce. But Kobe Bryant, he's that lengthy cornerback, who really has that speed that we can match with. So, Ari, what were your thoughts about Seahawks drafting Kobe Bryant in the 4th?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Kenneth Walker in round 2 and even myself was initially it's just kind of like the shock because you didn't expect them, even though they had that needed running back with Carson's future uncertain and pending on a 1-year deal. They had that needed running back, but I don't think anyone expected them to kind of take one that early. And they had, Andrew Booth sitting there who had kind of fallen due to some medical issues. I believe that's why he fell. That's kind of the shock at first. But kind of in hindsight, knowing that they got Kobe Bryant and Tariq Woolen at this value for rounds 4 and 5 makes me like that Kenneth Walker pick a little bit more. I forget, it might be listed. Kobe, he won the award for like best cornerback in the country last year, I believe. So even though he was playing aside Sauce Gardner, he was still really, really good in his own right. And, we saw Cincinnati make that run to the playoff, and he was a huge part of their kind of dominant defense that, right, I think they played Alabama, I believe it was in semifinal. Or who did they play in the?
Yeah, it was Bama. It was Bama.
And even they gave Alabama some troubles at times. They made it close even into the fourth quarter. So, and that duo of Gardner and Bryant were a huge reason for that. And then Tariq Woolen, who when I was talking to some people about the Kobe Bryant pick, some were hoping Tariq Woolen was who they took there, and he ended up following them over a round later to round 5. And one interesting thing I saw on, I think, Twitter was that, so he's a wide receiver turned cornerback, and the last time the Seahawks took a wide receiver turned cornerback was Richard Sherman, also in round 5, literally one pick apart overall from when they took Richard Sherman. So that is kind of interesting and kind of, I don't know, like eerie in a way, kind of like just kind of the similarities of their path from wide receiver to cornerback, and then the fact that the Seahawks took them both the same round and literally one pick apart, like overall. And at 6'4", as it says here, he kind of has that size that Pete Carroll and, the Seahawks defensive coordinator and coaching staff kind of like. So you kind of have, I think, the really good combination of kind of a high floor in Bryant, who's kind of proven himself more, versus Woolen, who's not quite as proven, but has a super kind of high ceiling. With his size, I think he ran a 4.26 40, I believe. So kind of the speed, explosiveness, so his ceiling paired with Bryant's floor makes for a super kind of exciting kind of, what if of what they can be as, potentially battling both of them to be immediate week 1 starters, I believe. So I think, overall the Seahawks did a really, really good job of kind of addressing, all the needs that they had outside of quarterback, which we've talked about how a lot of teams with, quarterbacks falling in this draft, a lot of teams like the 2023 class more than this year. And so I think, I thought the Seahawks were going to take a quarterback even late, just as a flyer. Like Carson Strong didn't even get drafted, I thought, which was kind of shocking. So I thought even if they didn't take a quarterback early, they might take a flyer on someone. Like Sam Howell went in, I think, round 5, I believe. So the fact that they didn't even take a single quarterback kind of says a lot, I think. But so, we'll see if they stick with Drew Lock, trade for Baker Mayfield, which I'm kind of up and down about. But that's kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, from my thoughts, I definitely agree with Tariq Woolen. I mean, that man is lethal out of the University of Texas San Antonio. You mentioned the Richard Sherman comparisons, which I didn't even know of, which are very like ironic and like kind of like creepy, but like in a good way. But the Seahawks definitely addressed the positions that they definitely have been claiming for these past few drafts, getting 2 great alignment in Charles Cross, who are probably going to be starters, Charles Cross and Abe Lucas. You pair that with the corners with Kobe Bryant and Tariq Woolen, a great edge rusher in Boy Mafe, and then Tyree Smith out of Ohio State in the 5th round as well. I can't complain about this draft as a Seahawks fan. A lot of analysts have us as an F, and I think they're actually ridiculous. I think whatever they're saying is asinine. It's stupid. It's foolish. It should be illegal for what they're saying about the Seahawks right now, because no, I'm being serious. It's illegal because they're only pointing to the fact that we didn't draft a QB. And yes, there were plenty of options like Carson Strong, who didn't even go drafted, or Billy Zapp, who went to the Patriots, I think, in the 4th round. Sam Howell was a 5th rounder. I believe there was Malik Willis in the 3rd round. Same for Ritter. And I mean, a lot of people are saying, oh, the Seahawks going to trade up. Are they going to get a quarterback? And I'm glad that we didn't get a quarterback, personally, because I think what the Seahawks are thinking is, okay, next year's class is going to be very, very good. We might as well protect our quarterback, our new future quarterback, with the 2 great offensive linemen. Still having DK potentially, since he's going to sign a deal soon, I hope, and then Lockett still. We're building our corners back with Kobe Bryant and then Tariq Woolen. We still are addressing our defensive line, and then in the middle, we have Jordan Brooks, who's one of our breakout stars. So I think all we need is to find the future quarterback, which is probably going to happen next year, and that's why we'd probably trade up to get like a guy like C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young, depending on what the situation is. So if I had to say if this was a good draft, I think this was a great draft for the Seahawks. I think I give them an A. They addressed every single thing that they needed to. I was praying that they did not take a quarterback. They did not take a quarterback. And they got great value for all these picks. I mean, you talked about Tariq Woolen, example, who was supposed to be that 4th-round pick, but obviously Kobe Bryant was there. So we took him into who fell all the way down, and then Tariq Cohen, who fell all the way down to the 5th. So just great value for these picks. I mean, Abe Lucas definitely going to help with that offensive line. Kenneth Walker. It'll be interesting to see how he is used at camp. I think he's going to be probably the lead back, I assume, or he's going to be in that platoon with maybe Penny or Carson. I don't know what's going to go on there, but I'm definitely pleased with this draft from the Seahawks. I can't complain. I think this is the best draft they've had in a very, very long time, and they didn't waste a quarterback talent this year. I think next year's is by far better, and I think that's what they were thinking too in terms of their draft strategy for this year. And that's the draft strategy that they needed to think of, because next year's is way better than this year's. And I think you mentioned the trade for Baker Mayfield. I hope they don't, because Drew Lock is already here, and I think he's probably going to be assumed to be the starter. And we re-signed Geno Smith, probably going to be the backup. And it's just going to be a trial and error year. So I think the Seahawks get a definite A in this draft. I would say A+, but that Kenneth Walker pick at first had me a little stunned when we could have drafted someone like Andrew Booth at that position. But, I do like the fact that they made it up with great talent in the back end with Kobe Bryant and Tariq Woolen, and then Tyree Smith as well. So I would definitely give the Seahawks draft class an A for now.
Yeah, like my only slight concern with the plan of you assume that they're gonna attack quarterback next year is that while they're not gonna be, great, I feel like they're still gonna be good enough where they're not gonna get a top 3 to 5 pick. But then you look at the draft capital that they got in the Russell Wilson trade, I think that they probably have enough of capital to be able to trade up. I think it was Bleacher Report, the way too early 2023 mock draft had them as, I think, number 8 pick. And so I think using that kind of 8 pick and another, 2 to 3 picks, let's just say, could probably be enough to trade up into that top 3 to 5 to be able to get one of Stroud or Bryce Young. You also have Will Levis out of Kentucky, who could be there at number 8 if they decide to stay there. But yeah, I mean, that would be interesting to see, because I feel like while, quarterback's obviously the biggest question mark, of course, I feel like they still have, between, and I was going to say with Kenneth Walker, I think, because Chris Carson's future is still very much, kind of in doubt, uncertain, coming off the season-ending neck surgery. So I think the Seahawks, at least I would assume that the Seahawks taking a running back that early means that Carson's probably not going to return next season. Maybe he does, but between Carson's uncertainty and pending on a 1-year deal, like I said before, running back was definitely a need, because when you look back at the Super Bowl years, they relied on a dominant run game and a dominant defense. That's kind of how they were building this draft, with defense, O-line, and running back. So we'll see if the Seahawks kind of get back to that mentality. What else was I going to say? But yeah, I mean, I think overall they definitely addressed all the immediate needs that they needed. I mean, obviously you see the needs up here between linebacker, which they got an outside linebacker / kind of rusher and Mafe, and then quarterback. But again, I assume that they kind of had that in plan of waiting on quarterback till next year. I think that's kind of what most people are assuming. I agree that some grades just look at quarterback. The Seahawks didn't take one and automatically give them a bad grade, when in reality, teams know that next year's class is going to be stronger. But obviously, grades only mean so much at the end of the day. Like the Seahawks draft class of Richard Sherman and Thomas and all of them, most outlets gave them a D, F, or whatever for those years. So obviously, draft grades by analysts mean nothing, because no one can predict the future with how things are kind of gonna pan out, but just purely going on paper based off what the team needed, they definitely did their job, and it was interesting to kind of see because I think not just us as Seahawks fans, but everyone kind of knew the Seahawks in years past as someone who either traded back or reached on a player, and so this year was the first year in a long time where I feel like they didn't really reach at all with any of these selections, and that normally equivalates to a good draft on paper. So I agree with you that this is definitely their best draft in a long time.
Yeah, but let's go back to the full draft board. As I mentioned, yeah, great draft class for the Seahawks. Now we're gonna get more into like the second round. Let's shout out some of the big names taken. Christian Watson taken second overall in the second round. We saw former UW alum, but he's that good. Kyler Gordon go to the Bears. I believe I think it was this round was Desmond Ridder taken, or was it the third round? I believe one of those two.
Round 3.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. But Sky Moore for Kansas City, that was a pretty interesting pick. George Pickens definitely for the out of Georgia. I mean, a lot of people. The George Pickens one is very interesting now, considering. Have you seen the TikTok? This man, people are saying that this man is going to be a menace. He looked like some kind of, he was on some demon weird.
When he saw he was picked,
yeah. When Pickens was picked by the Steelers at that pick, so maybe he'll bring that energy to the field. But yeah, he definitely is going to be a great Juju replacement, I think, for that offense, who now has Kenny Pickett or Joe Trubisky. And George Pickens, he has that grittiness. He has that size. I like that pick for the Steelers right there. They definitely needed that Juju replacement. And when George Pickens fell to the second round, that was his pick. So that's pretty much my pick of this round, George Pickens, or maybe Sky Moore going to Kansas City from Western Michigan. Ari, from both fantasy and just real life, what were your Marco. What were your biggest impressions of the second round?
Yeah, I mean, after the first round was more defensive oriented, we saw more offensive skill position players taken in this round. You mentioned Christian Watson, so that's one. Breece Hall, first running back off the board to the Jets. We mentioned Kenneth Walker, of course, to the Seahawks. Wanda Robinson to the Giants. John Mechie to the Texans. Tyquan Thornton to the Patriots. George Pickens mentioned to the Steelers. Alec Pierce to the Colts. Sky Moore to the Chiefs. The first tight end off the board, and Trey McBride to the Cardinals. And then just finishing off. And then we saw James Cook, the brother of Dalvin Cook, going to the Bills. I didn't really understand the Cardinals pick of Trey McBride. It's like they just gave Ertz a 3-year deal, and they have so many more, I feel like, holes on the defensive side of the ball that I don't really know what their kind of thinking was with this pick. But I feel like McBride, it's not going to be till year 2, maybe year 3, where we start to see an actual role in the passing game. I want to say it was round 3, which we'll get into, where the Colts took Woods out of, I think, Virginia he went to, and that's a landfill I like a lot more in terms of tight ends. But I like the Sky Moore landing spot with the Chiefs. Obviously, we knew that they were going to attack it some way after losing Tyreek Hill. And then we have Christian Watson going to the Packers with the second pick of round 2. And obviously, we know that there's a lot of targets open in there with losing Devontae Adams and Marquez Valdes-Scantling. The only issue there is it normally takes Rodgers a while to kind of get adjusted to rookie receivers. Normally he doesn't trust them, it seems like, right away. So that would be interesting to see because obviously the opportunity is going to be there for him. We have Breece Hall going to the Jets, which they traded up for him to take him early round 2. So you assume that he's going to at least immediately take over the early down work over Michael Carter, who they just took him round 4 last year. I still think Carter's going to kind of maintain a third down role, passing down role, but I think Breece Hall immediately comes in and takes at least 60 to 65% of the snaps in that backfield. We had a couple of kind of unexpected picks, I would say, and Wanda Robinson going to the Giants and Tyquan Thornton going to the Patriots. I didn't expect either of them to go as early as I did. I feel like Robinson is kind of similar to Sterling Shepard, so I'm not really sure where he'll fit into the offense, but clearly they have big plans for him taking him that early. Yeah, I think that was mostly what I kind of took away from this round, both from a real life and fantasy perspective. Definitely a lot more offensive players taken in this round compared to round one.
Yeah, you definitely mentioned the second round with a bunch of skill players taken, like running backs like Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker, and James Cook near the end. Also, shout out James Cook. Dalvin Cook's little brother going to the Buffalo Bills. Yeah, this was a pretty interesting round. Definitely, a lot of people were saying that some of the QBs were going to be taken in this round, and that was pretty much one of the bigger trends in this draft, just how far were the QBs going to fall. And it was crazy to think that people at the beginning, in a way too early 2022 NFL draft projections, Sam Howell was like the number 2 or number 3 overall pick in the draft. And that dude fell. We'll get into where he fell later. We already talked about it a little bit. But yeah, this second round, was filled with all these position players. I like Breece Hall definitely going to the Jets. Breece Hall was definitely that. A lot of people are saying that Breece Hall was definitely the number 1 running back out of this class, and he definitely is that guy. I mean, we've seen him on offense. He's definitely going to be that 3-down back, that lead back for this Jets team, I believe. I don't really, even though, yes, they did take Michael Carter last year, and I think they still have Ty Johnson or whoever their other backs are, but I think Breece Hall is definitely going to be that lead back for them. I think that's what the expectation is for them, picking him early in the second round. You mentioned Christian Watson going to the Packers. It's going to be, you mentioned Aaron Rodgers' reputation with rookie wide receivers. Obviously, doesn't trust them not the greatest amount of trust there. That's understandable just because, Aaron Rodgers has been playing football since 2005 in the NFL or whatever. And it's 2022. So obviously these rookies may have, a little bit of an ego and then stuff like that. But it'll be interesting to see how Christian Watson's definitely going to be used, especially next year as that number 1 guy. But now we head into the third, and this is where the quarterback started to get taken as we move down the list here. We saw Desmond Ridder finally get taken at number 10 by the Falcons. The Falcons got their future quarterback. Malik Willis went later in this round to the Tennessee Titans. This was a pretty interesting round. I definitely say so. Abe Lucas early went to the Seahawks. I think that was a great pick. Rachaad White going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in this round as well. Ari, what were your impressions of the third round?
So kind of just looking at it, you mentioned the quarterbacks. We saw Desmond Ridder go off the board, Malik Willis, and Matt Corral. So those 3 quarterbacks go off the board. We saw Nakobe Dean finally go off the board after he was really falling far. He went to the Eagles, the 19th pick. Looking at the other skill position players, this is where Joanie Woods went. Arguably the most athletic tight end in this class, going to the Colts with Matt Ryan, where we've known he's kind of thrown a lot of those tight ends during his years at the Falcons. So I really like this landing spot for Woods, both immediately and long-term from a fantasy perspective. So there's that. I think we saw David Bell go, I believe, late this round, to the Browns, which I liked a lot. I think he can be in the kind of an immediate replacement for Jarvis Landry, kind of taking over that kind of possession role. I have him tabbed as one of the more polished receivers coming out of this class. And so, I really like this landing spot opposite of Amari Cooper in Cleveland. We saw Washington take Brian Robinson of Alabama at running back, which should be interesting. You already had Antonio Gibson there. They re-signed J.D. McKissick. And And we haven't really seen Washington commit fully to Gibson as like kind of like the workhorse. And so taking a guy like Robinson, who's kind of like a bigger back, I think he's going to have, at least a small role on the goal line, because like it says here, he's a true downhill runner. So I think he'll have a role on the early down the goal line. And so when you mix that with McKissick's role in the passing game, I think that's really going to limit Gibson's upside. From a fantasy perspective, he'll still be, the 1A and everything, but definitely not a great look, I think, for him to kind of to have not only a running back added to the backfield, but round 3, which is, fairly early overall. So we'll see how that pans out. And then the 406 Danny Gray with the last compensatory pick of the round, a super, super fast receiver who maybe if they're looking at trading Deebo Samuel, maybe they use someone like Gray more, not like Samuel, not in the same role, but kind of in the short passing game to kind of make up for that loss, I think. So yeah, that was kind of my overall takeaways from this round.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you there. Nakobe Dean pretty much falling all the way down was one of the bigger storylines. You mentioned Joanie Woods out of Virginia, one of the more athletic tight ends, if like pretty much the most athletic tight end in this draft class. We finally saw Malik Willis get drafted. He's in an interesting position, obviously, now probably going to be backing up Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee. But, Tennessee they just traded away A.J. Brown, but, maybe they're heading in a different direction. Now first A.J. Brown's gone, and then Tannehill obviously is going to be the quarterback, but, maybe they may be trending in a younger direction. We'll see. But yeah, you mentioned some of the other position players taken. I definitely liked David Bell as well going to the Cleveland Browns. You mentioned he was one of the more polished route runners, and I definitely agree with you in this draft class. And, the Browns, obviously pending legal investigation, all that, assuming that Deshaun's going to be the starter, he's going to have, Amari Cooper. They may, get, another receiver during free agency. We'll see. But then, drafting David Bell, it looks like they don't really need anything else. When you have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt also in that backfield, and then you have Amari Cooper on one side, and then on the other side you have now David Bell. David Bell is probably going to be getting a lot of production on this offense. I like that as well. Yeah, that was pretty much one of my bigger impressions, just the fact that Nakobe Dean fell all the way down for the Eagles. Eagles had a very good draft as well. First trading for A.J. Brown, and then they get Jordan Davis on the first. Great value pick right there. And then Nakobe Dean falling all the way down to the third. Obviously, it was because of some surgery that he declined to get. That could potentially be a big risk for organizations. But Philly's still taking a chance on him, and he's definitely going to be one of the more powerful linebackers in this draft class. And I'm excited to see him play with, obviously, Jordan Davis, who we literally just played with. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how those two play in that Eagles organization. But now, Art, do you want to look at that fourth round for me? This is probably going to be this was the fourth round. This was the first on Saturday. We had Kadon go out of UW. He went to the Bucks, another tight end. That's interesting to me. Rob Gronkowski has been rumored to come back for that Bucks team, but we don't really have any certain answers. And Tom Brady and that Gronk connection is pretty much one of the best duos in football in terms of quarterback tight ends. And then Kobe Bryant, we already talked about him going forth for the Seahawks. I believe there was another quarterback selected. Oh yeah, Billy Zapp was in this round by the Patriots. Definitely interesting considering that they already have Mac Jones, who they just got in the first round last year. But I guess they can use him as a backup maybe in case Mac Jones goes down. All right, can you scroll in a little bit? Sorry, I'm a little trouble seeing that.
Scroll, like zoom in or what?
Yeah, zoom in. Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's perfect for me right now. But yeah, this fourth round, it was kind of quiet. Obviously, one of the bigger splashes was Billy Zapp going to the Patriots. A little confusing. It was kind of funny. I remember seeing the video from the Rams after Cole Strange got picked in the first round. McVay and I think think it was the GM of the Rams. They were laughing about it, talking about like, oh, Cole Strange went in the first. Oh, he was like on my 104th on the board or something. But making fun of the obviously making fun of that pick. But this round, was actually not that bad. Honestly, it was kind of quiet. Not really any big splashes. Obviously, this is Saturday morning, so a lot of the people there are either tired of hearing with the blank pick in the blank round and all that stuff. But it was obviously great to see some great talent drafted in this round. Kobe Bryant, one of the bigger ones for me personally. But there is some great value in this fourth round. Ari, thoughts on this fourth round?
Yeah, I mean, we saw some more running backs go off the board. We saw Dameon Pierce out of Florida go to Houston, which I think is a really interesting landing spot. They only have Marlon Mack and Rex Burkhead there right now, and so Pierce has the tools to be a third-down back. So I think that we could see Pierce take over this backfield like we saw Michael Carter go in round 4 last year, and he eventually took over the Jets backfield. So it might not be immediately week 1. Maybe it will be, but I think Pierce has a chance to take over that backfield. And then later we saw Zamir White and Isaiah Spiller go back-to-back. I was a little bit surprised to see Spiller kind of go this late. I thought he might go maybe a round earlier, but he lands with the Chargers. And we know the Chargers, Eckler is the 1A, but they've kind of been looking for that 1B. They've had, Josh Kelly, Larry Roundtree,
Justin Jackson.
Yeah, Justin Jackson. Yeah, like they've kind of rotated those guys. And so I think Spiller could be that 1B that they've been looking for. And then we have Zamir White out of Georgia going to the Raiders, where, I think the Raiders just declined the fifth-year option of Josh Jacobs. So Zamir White could be their future lead back after this upcoming season. And then we saw Son Haskins go to Tennessee. Under his tires. Obviously, I'm sure Haskins, he won't have a huge role immediately, but he maybe 2, 3, 4 years out from now, maybe he will. That was mostly it from this round for me.
Yeah, you pretty much summed it up as well. You mean Hassan Haskins. You mentioned Isaiah Spiller falling, but he definitely will be in a good 1B scenario in Los Angeles for the Chargers. Zamir White, that could be interesting. Since you mentioned the Raiders did just recently decline Josh Jacobs' option, which is, kind of ironic since they drafted him in the first round after that Khalil Mack trade. And now you look who won that trade. But yeah, it was pretty running back heavy this round. Probably getting that 1B or maybe sleeper starters like Zamir White or whoever the Texans. Who the Texans get again? What's his name?
Dameon Pierce.
Oh, Dameon Pierce, out of Florida. That's right. Yeah, I forgot his name for a second. Yeah, that could definitely be something interesting if Dameon Pierce could potentially get the starting job in Houston system, where everything is just rebuilt down in Houston right now after everything going on there. But now we'll head into the fifth round. This is the round where Sam Howell finally went. It was kind of crazy that Sam Howell was regarded as like a number 2 overall pick in this year's way too early draft, and he falls to the first pick in the 5th round to Washington. He'll be backing up Carson Wentz in for the Commanders. Oh, that's right, they're the Commanders this year. Yeah, but you go down the board here. This is kind of sleeper territory. Very interesting to see. Sam Howell fall this far. I think if Carson Wentz goes down, considering he is as fragile as a piece of paper, I believe Sam Howell could potentially be that starter down there for Washington and kind of elevate that franchise to maybe something better than 500. We'll see. But Ari, out of this 5th round, any sleepers that you see, or any offensive skill players that you really like to see to go in this 5th round?
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be diamonds in the rough that fall this far, but there's no one that really stands out too much. The Falcons did take Tyler Algier, I believe is how you pronounce his name, out of BYU, and they kind of they have re-signed Cordell Patterson, but maybe they move Patterson more back to wide receiver and then have him maybe eventually be more of the early down kind of workhorse. We'll have to wait and see. But the Falcons were kind of one of the destinations that could have needed a running back if they wanted one. The draft capital isn't there, but it doesn't mean that he can't, impress in training camp and kind of work his way up into a key role in the backfield. So that would be something to keep an eye on, in training camp and preseason.
Yeah, you mentioned Algier out of BYU. He definitely was pretty much the reason why BYU was very successful last year. He ran through defenses, including ours at WSU. He ran through pretty much the Pac-12. What you said is that he ran through the Pac-12, so you can definitely see Diamond and Rough there, especially in that Falcons system where obviously Cordell Patterson is their lead back, but he's getting old and he's been utilized as so many positions, and obviously they're in a rebuild now with Ritter probably going to be replacing Mariota in a couple years, and they already have Kyle Pitts. They just drafted Drake London. They're definitely rebuilding for the future. I think Cordell Patterson won't be a part of that future, definitely. So I can definitely imagine seeing Algier maybe as that lead back in a couple of years. We'll see. But now we head into the second to final round. This is the sixth round. It's getting deep now, people.
We saw the best punter go off the board.
Yeah, have you seen this man punt? This guy is crazy. Matt Ariaza out of San Diego State. This dude punts from end zone to end zone. And it's fitting that he goes to the Bills. You saw his tweet saying, "Somebody get me a table." This man fits that energy, and definitely one of the best punters I have ever seen in the NFL. That was pretty much one of the better picks in this round that I saw. When you get down the list, you just see all these good guys getting a good opportunity. I think this is the round where Jaylen Watson out of Wazoo. No, wait, that was the seventh round. Never mind. But Ari, any diamonds in the rough other than Matt Ariaza at number one?
I'll have to kind of dive deeper into all these guys more. We saw Keontae Ingram out of USC go to Arizona, and with Chase Edmonds going to Miami, I'm not exactly sure if they have anyone set behind James Conner, but maybe Ingram. Conner's kind of had an injury history, so maybe Ingram, if Conner was to miss time, Ingram could step in to that kind of lead role. But we'll have to kind of see if he earns that number 2 role out of training camp in the preseason. Tyler Beatty out of Missouri, the Ravens, their backup's always kind of banged up, and they have a lot of guys coming off major injuries, so maybe he has some role. Nothing that I'd necessarily bank on, but there's definitely some name. There's always guys who succeed late in these rounds. It's just a matter of finding who they are. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, you mentioned it all, and then finally we get to the final round, the 7th round. You already see it. Montaric Brown. Don't know who that is, but this is where you see a bunch of who's and where is he from. And but quick shout out Jaylen Watson going to the Chiefs in this round out of Wazoo. He definitely is that elite talent. I think he was right there. He definitely is a great talent out of Wazoo. I saw him play. He could definitely be a great corner for that team. Who now just lost Tyrann Mathieu going to the Saints. That secondary definitely depleting, but I think Jaylen Watson, can make an improvement there. And then we had pick mystery relevant number 247, go to Brock Purdy going to San Francisco. Brock Purdy, he was the quarterback at Iowa State. He led them to a Alamo Bowl loss to Wazoo. I like to call it the Alamo Bowl loss to Wazoo. He was a starter. He was there since 2018. He was a freshman out of Gilbert, Arizona. A lot of people saw him as a potential 3rd rounder, maybe if he developed, and then he goes as the last pick in the draft. So he's going somewhere. But Ari, this is the final round. We'll get into undrafted after this, but any diamonds in the rough here? What do you like from the 7th and final round?
Yeah, no one that really stands out, at least at the moment. The this kind of brings up the interesting question. I want to hear what you think. But if you were, because obviously it's always it's funny. We had a Chris Paul and an Isaiah Thomas going this round, so that's kind of funny. But if you were, let's just put yourself in the perspective of being, one of these prospects. Would you rather hear your name called in round 7, like so you hear your name called, but you go to where you're drafted or whatever, or would you rather be an undrafted free agent where you don't hear your name called, but you get to pick, where for the most part you get to pick where you go? Which do you think you would rather do in this position?
It's a good question. Obviously, the undrafted route has a lot more motivation because obviously you can say, oh, a bunch of these teams passed on you during the draft, but now they want to sign you after just because, they were going after other people. But, it's just an opportunity to prove all the doubters wrong. You had, Justin Ross, for example, he was one of the biggest guys who went undrafted. He was supposed to be like a top pick in the draft, and he fell out. And now he just signed a undrafted free agent deal with the Kansas City Chiefs. But, for guys like that, it gives them that extra motivation. For guys who fell so hard, it gives them that extra motivation to prove the doubters wrong. So I'd rather be an undrafted free agent because, it kind of gives you that storyline versus, yes, you can do the same thing in the 7th, but with the availability to, be an undrafted free agent and pick wherever I want to go and see, and, pick out my options and see what I like and what I don't like, and go in scenarios where, I could be playing with former teammates, or I could be playing with, a system where I'm in a winning position or, something like that. So I definitely would rather be undrafted free agent in this position.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. So kind of looking at some of the top names who didn't get drafted. You mentioned Justin Ross, once considered a top 10 pick a couple years ago. He was forced to miss the 2020 season, I think it was, maybe 2021 with the spinal issue. And now he goes undrafted. So clearly the talent is still there. It's just a matter of, if he can kind of reach his maximum potential despite his spinal issue. So definitely a player to kind of root for, given what he's gone through. I mentioned earlier Carson Strong out of Nevada, the quarterback. I know some had him mocked going around 3 to 4, so it's kind of shocking to not even see a team take a chance on him, even in like the 6th round, 7th round. Do you remember where he went? I forget off the top of my head where he went.
For school, he went to Nevada.
No, I mean where he signed with after.
I don't remember, but you mentioned Carson Strong. A lot of people said you mentioned as 3rd to 4th round talent, and for him to just fall all the way down out of the draft, very, very, shocking to see a bunch of teams just pass on this guy. But he's going to Philly. That's where he was going. He's going to Philly. Yeah, that's right. He signed with Philly after the draft. So, but yeah, you see all the top guys. I want to bring up a funny stat, but it's pretty intriguing. Texas, they had the same amount of draft players as I did. You know what I had? 0. You know what Texas had? 0. So, it kind of shows you, is Texas, I had to jab that in there. But, that's a big one. You see all Texas, bringing all these recruits in, just the Texas, Texas is back and all that stuff. And then for them to not even have a single one. And you had Yale had someone in the draft. Fayetteville State had someone in the draft, but not Texas. So that's another thing that Texas could definitely be, they could be losing the recruiting battle soon if they don't really have any draft prospects or anyone big in the draft. That could definitely ruin their reputation if they keep, not having no players in the draft. And then shout out Georgia, 15. They were a championship team for a reason. Excuse me. And it showed 15 draft picks. I think it's the highest ever for one college. So shout out Georgia.
They have like half the starting defense go in the 1st round. So that's definitely impressive.
That Georgia Bull. I talked about it a lot last year. That Georgia Bulldogs defense had to be one of the best defenses I've ever seen in college football in a long time. But this has been a long episode. We did our draft recap. This is going to be another episode. Tune in Wednesday. We'll recap everything NBA. And we also have the second round starting. Oh, my goodness. Well, Philly's losing. They're not by 20. So Philly is probably going to lose game one here with 4 minutes left. And, they brought out the subs. So, it's over. We'll talk about, game ones from every series. I know there's a couple game two tomorrow. We'll talk about, the teams that did not make it past the first round. We'll see what their future's like. You have any last thoughts about this episode?
No, yeah, I think that was pretty good of recapping what went down and the NFL draft. And we'll definitely have more. This won't be, all our talk of the NFL draft. We'll have more later in the week, but we'll also just mix it up with NBA, MLB, maybe some other things. But yeah, definitely a good episode today.
Yeah, we will see you guys on Wednesday for our NBA playoffs update after the first round. But this has been an episode of AKP Sports Talk. That's Ari. I'm Korea. We will see you guys on